There are so many exciting new books that are still to come out in 2026, and that is what we're going to be talking about in this video. This is kind of a follow-up to a video that I made back in December, where I broadly talked about the books that I was most excited to be released in 2026. However, since then, more books have been announced, so we're going to be focusing on the second half of the year in this video. I'll leave that previous video linked in the description just in case you want to check it out. I'm only going to be talking about books by authors who I've read from in the past, because I want to be able to tell you specifically why I'm excited for these books beyond just the synopsis. Also, I will have the UK release dates in the description, and maybe I'll put them on the screen. Editing me is going to regret saying that, but obviously double check if you live outside the UK whether the release dates are the same, because sometimes they can be different. I've also tried to group these based on genre, and we're going to start with what I think is the only romance book that I have on my list, and that is The Missed Connection by Tia Williams. We're going to ignore the cover. I am not the biggest fan of this cover, but to be honest, I'm probably going to read it on my Kindle anyway, so it doesn't bother me too much. But the synopsis sounds so much fun. It sounds like a romance movie. It follows a woman who meets this handsome stranger on a flight to Paris, and they hit off. You know, sparks start to fly, but they miss the chance to exchange contact details. So she starts this mission to try and find him, and I think it kind of goes viral, or it starts to spread, at least within her circle. I'm not 100% sure, but it sounds like it could be more of a contemporary lit fic rather than a romance, which does kind of line up with the other books that I've read by Tia Williams. I loved 7 Days in June, and I also really enjoyed A Love Song for Ricky Wilde. Both of those more hard-hitting romances, which is actually my preference when I'm reading a contemporary romance. I want those hard-hitting topics. So yeah, Tia Williams has become an auto by author for me, and I am excited for this one, even though I almost skimmed past it because, like I said, not the biggest fan of the cover. This next book, I'm not 100% sure what genre it is. I'm assuming it's some kind of crime fiction, because that's what this author has written in the past, and also from the synopsis it sounds like it might be. It's called Helpless by Jessica Knoll, the author of Bright Young Women, which was one of my favourite books of a few years ago, and I keep meaning to pick up other books by this author. The only thing about this new release is it hasn't even come out yet, and already it doesn't have the best average rating on Goodreads. Early ARC reviewers aren't loving this one, but it does sound intriguing. It follows a woman who is being held captive in a cabin by her ex-boyfriend. She is now a producer in Hollywood. I think they dated when she was in college, and she wrote an episode of a TV show that was based on their relationship and this breakup. Apparently this is dark, and I don't know if it's going to be too dark for me, but I am intrigued by the divisive reviews. I'd rather read a book that I hate with a passion than a book that is instantly forgettable, and Bright Young Women to me was very memorable. It's one that I keep thinking about. Catherine Ryan Howard is one of my auto-buy authors, and I didn't even know that she had a new release coming out until I saw it on Goodreads. This one is called Buyer Beware, and it follows a woman who moves into a new house hoping for a fresh start. However, what she doesn't know is this new home is already hiding someone else's secrets, and those people are determined to keep those secrets hidden. So it's about her starting to unravel the house's disturbing backstory. It's described as a thriller full of mind-boggling twists and turns, which I know from experience Catherine Ryan Howard can deliver a unique twist that catches me off guard but makes complete sense. I also know that she can do tension really well, so I really hope this book delivers on that. Every year I look forward to Riley Sager releasing yet another book that I'm either going to love or hate, and his release this year is called The Unknown. I actually have an arc of this through NetGalley, which I'm hoping to pick up soon. This is set in the present day, but 100 years ago 5 women disappeared from a remote island in Vermont, and now it's started happening again. It follows a woman who is a struggling actress, and she lands a role in a movie that's about this unsolved mystery. Sounds very familiar to Runtime by Catherine Ryan Howard. Not exactly the same, but that is actually one of my favourite books by Catherine Ryan Howard. Unpopular opinion. I wonder whether this is going to have like a movie within a book type situation. It also sounds like it's going to have the whole, is it paranormal or is there a more human explanation type of thing? And Riley Sager has done that in the past, which I've had mixed experiences with. I tend to either love Riley Sager's books or I hate them, but his last few releases have kind of been middle of the road for me. So I'm really hoping that this is either going to be 5 stars fantastic or I'm going to hate it because at least then I'll have strong feelings about it, unlike his last few releases. Next up we have In the Killer's Sight by Mike Omer, which I think is going to be the start of a new series. I don't know for definite because it doesn't say on Goodreads, but I think this author does tend to write series over standalones. I've read 2 of his crime thriller series in the past, the Abby Mullen mysteries and the Zoe Bentley mysteries. Both were fantastic, really well written. In this, we're following a canine officer who returns to her childhood home to track down a serial killer, and I think her niece is one of his victims. It sounds like a bit of a tropey synopsis of a woman returning to her hometown and uncovering secrets from the past, but I think her being a canine officer is going to add an extra level of interest. It says she takes 2 retired police dogs home with her, and it implies that they have a role in the book with helping to look for clues, and I think this is going to be well done based on my experiences with this author's other work. In his previous books, the main character's jobs have been important to the story. For example, in the Abby Mullen mysteries, the main character is an NYPD hostage negotiator, and I really liked seeing her do her job. Moving on to some fantasy books, we have The Eye of Leviathan, can't say that word, by M.A. Carrick. These are the authors who wrote The Mask of Mirrors and the Rook and Rose trilogy, one of my favourite political fantasy series of all time. I think this is a duology. It's a historical fantasy set during an alternative Spanish Golden Age. The synopsis describes it as a sweeping adventure set in a world where Fae secretly walk among those who seek to persecute them. The synopsis is a little confusing, so I'm not going to go into anything further than that, but I think it revolves around a plot to bring down an empire that is committing atrocities. I think Jesse Q. Sutanto has a few books coming out this year, but the one that I've written down that I'm most intrigued by is called An Edge Sharp Enough, which is a fantasy book. I think she's previously only written thrillers and cozy mysteries like Vera Wong's Unsolicited Advice for Murderers, which was one of my favourite books the year that I read it. It was a few years ago now, and I did also really enjoy the sequel. I hope that she continues to write in that series, but I'm curious to see what she does with a fantasy book. There's no cover yet, or at least there wasn't at the time that I was looking, but the synopsis describes it as a dark fantasy following an assassin, a scholar, a con man, and a guard racing to save their world from a miracle gone wrong. I think that sounds really intriguing. I'm hoping this has some kind of found family element as well, because that was one thing that I thought was done really well in the Vera Wong series. Mazeywood by Tananarive is a literary thriller that is following the grandson of a famous black actress from the 1940s and 50s. He is now a filmmaker, and he returns to his grandmother's cabin in the California mountains only to encounter the legacy of her rage. Apparently this is connected to one of Tananarive's short stories that appears in the collection called The Wishing Pool, so I'm going to try and read that as well, just in case it helps. I don't think it's necessary, but I will take any excuse to read more from Tananarive because The Reformatory and The Good House are 2 of my favourite paranormal horror novels. Speaking of short stories, Ken Liu also has another short story collection coming out this year called The Passing of the Dragon and Other Stories. The Paper Menagerie was one of my favourite books of last year. I think that is one of, if not my favourite short story collection. Definitely interested in checking this one out when it's released. Exit Party by Emily St. John Mandel is described as a new mind-bending epic story, and it sounds like it has some speculative elements, which would make sense because it's set in the near future where America is at war with itself, but for the first time in weeks there's some good news. The Republic of California has been declared, and there's been a curfew in Los Angeles that has now been lifted, and everyone in the city is going to a party. The main character is a woman who has just been released from prison, and she attends this party with a friend, but something feels off, and years later she's still haunted by that night and thinks that whatever happened at that party has fractured her sense of reality. It sounds very vague, but I really enjoyed Sea of Tranquility by Emily St. John Mandel. I really liked how it played with time, and so I'm curious whether this is going to do something similar. As You Wake, Break the Shell by Becky Chambers I don't think is in any way connected to the Wayfarer Seafarer series, but if you've heard any different, then please let me know. This, I believe, takes place on a planet that is barely livable. The atmosphere is poisonous, and the colonists that are on this planet have been struggling for years, but they've been forbidden from returning to the mothership until they've completed this specific goal. It follows two people who meet, grow, and fall in love, and begin to yearn for more than mere survival. So it sounds like it's going to be very character driven. I love Becky Chambers' writing. I just love how it feels like cozy sci-fi, but there's still a lot of heart to it. There's still these important themes and discussions, and yeah, I think this is either gonna warm my heart or break it. Maybe both. Another sci-fi that I've put on my list is Mossed in Space by Rebecca Thorne. This is the same author who wrote the Tomes and Tea series. That is a cozy fantasy, whereas this sounds like cozy science fiction. It's about a main character who buys a starship that's covered in moss. Turns out that this moss is actually an organic computer with a snarky attitude and serious abandonment issues. Sounds like a lot of fun. And it says it's recommended for fans of Martha Wells. Definitely interested in checking out something that's been compared to it. In this final section, I wanted to quickly go through some of my most anticipated sequels that have been announced. The first is The Secrets We Hide by Karen Slaughter. This is the second book in the North Falls series. What was the first book called? We Are All Guilty Here. Just remembered it. It came out last year and I read it because I saw it was nominated in the Goodreads Choice Awards. I listened to the audiobook, thought it was really well done. There was a lot of characters, and so it took me a while to get into. I really liked how the author set the scene in the first part, and then the second part wasn't at all what I was expecting. Karen Slaughter books are very dark, so just be aware of that if you have been interested in picking up her books. But I will definitely be reading book 2 because I really liked book 1. Set in a small town, follows a detective who is investigating, I'm assuming in each book she's investigating a different crime. The Eddie Flynn series is one of my favourite legal thriller series, and the 10th book is coming out over the summer. It's called One of Us is Guilty by Steve Kavanagh, and I still need to get up to date with this series. I actually started with book 4, so I haven't read the first 3 books in this series. I do have them on my Kindle, so I'll get to them eventually and I'll just view them as a prologue to the series that I've been enjoying. Steve Kavanagh is also hilarious. I met him at an event last year and he was just so funny, and I am just addicted to this series. It follows a main character called Eddie Flynn, who is a defense lawyer who used to be a con man, and so he's very sharp-minded, and he's very he uses his skills that he learned as a con man in order to defend his clients, and he's also got a whole ethos around only representing people that he believes are innocent. Adversary to the Villain by Hannah Nicole Mayra is the 4th book in the Assistant to the Villain series. This, I hope, is the last book in the series. I really like this series. I know it's not for everyone. It's a cozy romantasy, so it's set in a world that to me feels very generic, fairy tale like. It feels a bit like Shrek. I think I've literally described it in videos before as what if Shrek were a romantasy, and I thought the 3rd book was the final book until I got to the end and realised, oh no, there's more to come. I'm at a point now where I want it to wrap up, so I'm really hoping that this is the final book in the series, and I will be reading it because I have really enjoyed the romance in this book series, even though I haven't loved the plot, but it's fine, I'm reading it for the romance. It follows a main character who accepts a job working for the villain of this world, except it's very self-aware. Like, it doesn't take itself too seriously, and that's why I think the humour really works for me. Earthbound by Sarah El-Arifi is the 3rd and final book in the Feybound series. This is coming out quite soon, I think, and I haven't decided yet whether I want to continue this series. I really liked the first book, and then the second book for me was just okay. It was really underwhelming, and so I don't know whether I'm willing to dedicate the time to finishing this series, but I am kind of curious. I like the world. I think the world is one of the strongest things about it, and I like one of the romances. It follows these 2 elven sisters, and they each have their own romance, and I feel like this could have been amazing if it had been edited or developed a little more, and instead it's just so frustrating when you're reading a series and thinking, I should be loving this, but something is missing. And then the final book on my list is by Travis Baldree. This is a short story collection set within the world of legends and lattes, and I have an arc of this as well, actually. I'm very excited to read this because Legends and Lattes, one of my favourite cozy fantasy series. That does bring us to the end of the video, so thank you for watching. If you made it this far, let me know in the comments any of your most anticipated releases that are still to come out this year. Let me know the one book that you are the most excited for, whether that's a standalone or the sequel to a series that you've been reading. I have missed off, I might have said this in the intro, I've missed off some books because I already talked about them in my last video. These are just books that I've discovered since then and I didn't want to repeat myself. So yeah, thank you for watching. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Click subscribe if you would like to see more videos from me, but otherwise I will see you next time. Bye.